After a bitter primary season in Michigan revealed divisions among Democrats, the party is attempting to show how unified it is as the midterms get closer, and they did it pretty fast. Michigan's Democratic Party held a unity rally last night to celebrate its statewide ticket, including U.S. Senate nominee Abdul El-Sayed and gubernatorial nominee Jocelyn Benson. Both of them will be on the show. The current Michigan Secretary of State. They gave rousing messages to voters last night. Listen to this.
Who do you want Michigan's leaders to work for? The people or the powerful? Right? The people. Well, you all know who I'll work for. All of you and every Michigander in this state, not the highest bidder, not corporate interests, not Donald Trump, you.
We fight for the families barely able to put their groceries in the cart and check out. We fight for the mom who's worried about the child care she needs to be able to work a job that barely pays enough. We fight for the folks who are afraid about what happens if they get sick. We fight for each other.
They will be here along with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who lost to El-Sayed in the Senate primary. And a reminder, Michigan is just one of the battleground states that is key to the fight between Democrats and Republicans for the Senate majority. Alex Eisenstadt of Axios and Jessica Taylor of the Cook Political Report are back with us. Jessica, I think a lot of reporters and folks who care about this a lot and pay attention a lot, last year was kind of rolling my eyes at some Democrats who were saying the Senate was going to be in play. And including you, I think.
No, not me.
Okay. He's like, I didn't say it. So we were all wrong. But it seems like there's a real sense, not just among the Democrats, but actually the number crunchers, people like you and the folks at Cook Political Report, that there is something happening around the country. And I guess if you had to pull out a couple of themes that you're seeing popping up when you guys are talking to voters and talking to the candidates, what are you hearing?
I mean, I think it all comes back to just costs, that people feel like everything is too high. And I think that Abdul, he talked about money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all.
Very simple message.
Yeah, I think it really resonated with voters, especially about putting more money back in your pocket. I mean, Haley Stevens was not a great candidate on the stump. I think she struggled to get her message across. She did better at the end. But we have to remember that this was a very close primary, much closer than the polls showed. And so I think that this unity breakfast was clearly a first step in trying to unify the party. But do those voters that she won, she won more reliable Democratic-based voters, like black voters, older voters, white working class voters. So is Mike Rogers able to pick those off? This is why I still thought that Stevens was the stronger general election candidate. And, there's a real attack on his association with Hassan Piker, things about 9/11. Does he continue to appear with him? That is where he is really vulnerable. And Republicans are not being coy about this. They're using his full name in videos and things.
Is the Hassan Piker thing a real thing on the ground? It is one of those things that I'm unclear how much it breaks through to actual voters, because I think most people don't actually know who Hassan Piker is. I think we know. I think the people on the internet know. I think the average voter who is dealing with the high costs, who are dealing with lost their health care because of the Obama subsidies weren't expanded, do they care? I'm just not convinced that Hassan Piker is going to be an actual on-the-ground issue.
I think if you put $30 million behind an ad in Michigan that says that, he associated with someone who's called 9/11, that it was justified, I think it's going to be a real problem, especially as
even if he's apologized for it.
Even if he has, but you still have the clip out there. That's what goes in the ad and different things.
Well, speaking of the ad and them using Dr. El-Sayed's full name, he's going right at that. And Mike Rogers, this is an ad, this is him yesterday at the rally in Michigan. Let's watch what he had to say about that.
I'm up against a guy named Mike Rogers. And Mike Rogers, he's decided that he wants to focus on my name. I got some opinions about his name. See, it's very fitting for him, Rogers. Because that's his answer every time a corporation or Donald Trump tells him to do something. Mike, we need you to put a data center in the backyard. Roger. Mike, We need you to hike their prescription drug prices. Roger. Mike, we need you to rubber stamp this war we shouldn't be fighting. Roger. Mike, and this one's Donald Trump. I need you to lick these boots. Roger.
Not the boots.
I mean, not the boots, but I mean, that what we just saw there sort of exemplifies, I think, why El Sayed is so good. He's a great communicator. That Roger bit was very good. But the other piece that Eugene reacted to is that he's not afraid to go there, and he's sort of giving voice to what Democrats, what we've heard from around the country, they want people who are going to fight, and that shows fight.
We're going to see how good a candidate this guy really is, right?
Because Mike Rogers is not going to be a pushover,
right? And Republicans are going to spend a lot of money in this race, and they're going to dump a lot of opposition research on Abdul's head, things that maybe we haven't heard about yet, but we can only
might not even be true.
Stuff that we don't know what's coming down the pike, right? But we're going to get a sense of how good a candidate he really is, and that's what separates, who ends up winning is what separates the Major League Baseball players from the AAA players, right? And we're going to get a sense of if he's an MLB player or a AAA player.
Right.
It's also interesting, Jonathan, because you brought up that clip, the issues that he chose to include in the Mike Rogers name calling. Anti-data centers, hiking prescription drugs, rubber stamping a war, and being extremely deferential to Donald Trump. I mean, those are not communist, socialist issues. Alex, you had a piece this week that the GOP is planning a socialism telethon at their midterm convention in Texas. They plan to use their first ever midterm convention in Dallas next month to mount a sweeping, made-for-primetime case that Democrats have become captive to their activist left. Axios has learned they're essentially planning but their worst campaign, targeting the ascendant Democratic left and socialism. Jessica, do you, in all of the research that you're doing and all the time that you spend seeped in the numbers, is this going to be effective?
I still think that the midterms are going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. That's what it comes down to. But if they can make some of these candidates out to be too extreme, too scary, we saw in 2022 that candidates matter.
Do voters buy this language specifically that these candidates are socialists and communists?
I think someone like Roy Cooper, they don't buy it for in North Carolina. They don't buy it for a Sherrod Brown in Ohio. But with the more progressive candidates, that's where I think it's risky, because this isn't New York City. This isn't Denver. This is a real test of whether a more progressive candidate can win in a place like Michigan. I mean, I'm watching the Wisconsin primary coming up this Tuesday. You have an actual Democratic socialist. I mean, I think that the language gets fuzzy. They're sort of painting everyone with a really broad brush.
Right.
But you have an actual Democratic socialist that is running in one of the most quintessential swing states for governor, that I think she really puts that race more at risk. But again, is the wave big enough for Democrats that doesn't matter? And that might be the case. That's one reason why we kept Michigan Senate in toss-up. But I think it still is Republicans' best pickup opportunity. And why Wisconsin Senate, even if Francesca Hong wins on Tuesday, we're going to keep that race in toss-up as well.
Democrats, what's so interesting about Democrats is often they kind of allow Republicans to declare what the rules of the road are. They let them say what the debate is going to be about. And, I've been talking to a lot of Democrats, both moderates and lefties, about why is that the case? Alex, you cover Republicans in half for such a long time. They are very good at saying this is what this election is going to be about, right? This socialism conversation, right? This communism conversation. They are forcing every single Democrat to have to answer that question. Instead of the Democrats saying, this is ridiculous, reporters. They say that on other things, but on this, they're trying to say, well, I don't believe what Francesca's saying in Wisconsin. It's no, you don't live in Wisconsin. Say that. And I'm curious, when you're talking to Republicans, do they feel despite all of the wind at Democrats' back over the last year and a half in different places, how good or bad are they feeling about the midterms, both the House and the Senate?
When you're talking to them privately, they'll concede that the winds are at the Democrats' backs. I mean, they'll say that, right? I mean, they definitely think that they've got an uphill path to keeping the House. And they think they're still favored to keep the Senate at this point. One thing, though, to watch as it relates to Abdul, though, and the convention that you just mentioned is that the convention's timing is interesting because it ends the night before the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And so you've heard Republicans refer to Abdul by his full name. It's going to be interesting to see how they message that.
I think
some racism might be
I think we do. Real quick, we have to go, Jessica, but I want to follow up on something you just said. You said that Michigan is the best pickup opportunity for Republicans and that the Cook Political Report still has it as a toss-up. I'm just wondering, is there a Senate race that could be an unexpected pickup for Democrats that you're keeping an eye on that could cancel out the loss of Michigan?
I mean, the map is growing, and so I think you have Iowa and Texas that are in that next tier to get them but those are still double-digit Trump states. I moved Kansas this week onto the competitive map. So, there are these really red states. That's a 16-point Trump state that because Democrats have recruited well, and, sort of the Maine debacle and everything aside, they've recruited well in states like North Carolina, Ohio, Alaska, and that's one of the reasons why they're in the mix for Senate control.
I want to talk more about Kansas next time. Alex Eisenstadt, Jessica Taylor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And